All right, great. Yeah, I love seeing that folks are introducing themselves in the chat. Thanks all. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to first part of our health insurance webinar, Navigating California's Healthcare Systems for Inclusive Care and Coverage. As I'm sure many of you are aware, our healthcare systems can be very overwhelming to navigate on our own. So the hope is that after this webinar, you have a better understanding of the various healthcare plans, what to consider when applying and how to respond to common barriers when applying for coverage. This week also happens to be the 22nd National LGBTQ Health Awareness Week. So I feel like this webinar couldn't have come at a more perfect time. So thank you, Emma, for being here today and sharing your knowledge with everyone. And with that said, I want to introduce Emma for you all today, who will be our presenter. So Emma Dinkelspiel is a senior staff attorney in the Health Consumer Center at Bay Area Legal Aid, representing and advising clients on matters relating to health insurance and access to healthcare. The Health Consumer Center provides free assistance for clients enrolled in all types of insurance and none, including Medi-Cal, Medicare, plans through Covered California, employer plans, privately purchased insurance, COBRA coverage, and more. And then prior to joining the Health Consumer Center, she was a member of Bay Area's or Bay Legal's Housing, Reentry, and Public Benefits team. She received her JD from New York University School of Law in 2016 and her BA from Scripps College in 2011. So again, without further ado, I want to pass it over to Emma to lead us through today's presentation. Emma, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of information about California's healthcare systems, which indeed are a remarkable maze, and I hope I can help demystify some of the processes involved. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. How's that looking for everybody? Everything working good? Fantastic. So my plan today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about eligibility and enrollment. This is part one of a two-part series. So if you are interested in what care you can receive once you are within a California regulated health plan, I really hope you'll join us for the second part next week. We'll have representatives from the Department of Managed Healthcare here. They are the regulators for the majority of California plans. They're a really invaluable resource, and we'll be going deep on what you can get once you do have healthcare and what your rights are there. But today, we're going to focus on the question of how you get healthcare. And to start, I'm going to just do a quick rundown of who we are. I'll talk a little bit about the two major state subsidized health programs here in California, Medi-Cal and Covered California. We'll talk about how you qualify for one versus the other, how you get into one versus the other, and then I'll do a quick overview of some other programs and have some incredibly brief remarks on what's called public charge, on a major concern for a number of our immigrant clients, and in terms of accessing healthcare and when that does and doesn't apply. If you have any questions as we go along, you are more than welcome to ask them in the Q&A. I will probably take about one question per section and save the majority for the end, just in the interest of time. Please, Ariella can let me know if there's anything super urgent coming up, or if I have a sudden failure of sound quality. So as Ariella said, I work at Bay Area Legal Aid's Health Consumer Center. We are a member of the Health Consumer Alliance, which is a statewide network of legal aid organizations that are operated. We offer free assistance over the phone or in person to help people struggling with coverage or access to healthcare, including medical debt. And what's unique about us, rather than other legal aid programs, including other ones at my organization, Bay Area Legal Aid, is that we have no income or asset restrictions, although we're bound by legal aid rules in other regards. In this one, we are able to be more expansive, so we help people all across the income spectrum. Like I said, there's a legal aid agency for each county in California that runs a Health Consumer Alliance Center. And we also work in affiliation with the National Health Law Project, Western Center on Law and Poverty, and Justice and Aging. And some of the materials I'll be showing you here today were developed in collaboration with attorneys from some of those organizations. We cover everything. Ariella gave a great summary of what that is. Everything is a slight overstatement, but not too much. Outside of medical malpractice, most health insurance related issues are something that we can advise or provide information on. So give us a call. The number is on the screen, and you'll just put in your zip code and select the language that you speak, and you'll be directed to the correct agency. So I'd like to start with talking about the difference between Medi-Cal and Covered California. Like I said, these are the programs we'll be focusing on today. That's because they are a huge chunk of how Californians receive their health care. The other really major way that Californians receive health care is through employer insurance. But if you are on employer insurance, you're not usually thinking about enrolling into or your eligibility for employer insurance. That's usually something that comes with your benefits package. So we focus on this when we're talking about eligibility and enrollment as uh, the big number two, the 1.5, I think, in terms of, I believe, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but I think if you add up who's on Medi-Cal and who's on Covered California, it may be as much as or more as the people who are on employer insurance. Don't quote me on that. So the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, massively expanded access to Medi-Cal and created what's called the ACA coverage spectrum, or what we call the ACA coverage spectrum. Which if you take a look at this this helpful chart, if you need health insurance and you live in California, and you need government help to pay for your health insurance, you will be on what ideally is a seamless spectrum of coverage between Medi-Cal, the free state subsidized program, also known as state Medicaid, up to Covered California, which is the program on which you receive government subsidies to help pay for your healthcare. And you'll see that when you get onto Covered California versus on Medi-Cal will vary based on your age and in some cases based on whether or not you currently have a pregnancy, and a little while thereafter actually. So these programs are metered by the federal poverty level, which is a uniform standard of income set by the federal government to determine who is considered to be living in poverty. This is a federal standard. It does not take into account costs in California, which is a very common complaint that our clients advance and one really understands. And it is the 100% of the federal poverty level is what is considered to be living in poverty by the federal government, the amount of money that you would need to meet your needs on a national level. And various different programs are provided at various different multiples of that amount. So what's the difference? Medi-Cal is for people with lower incomes, usually 138% of the federal poverty level and below. Medi-Cal currently has no premiums for any of its programs. That could change in the coming years for certain specialty programs, but by and large, there are no premiums, no monthly cost to buy into the program for any Medi-Cal programs of any kind. And there ought to be no other costs associated with somebody who is solely on Medi-Cal, as in you shouldn't be asked to have a copay when you go to the doctor. You shouldn't have a coinsurance. There are in some instances deductibles, which we'll talk about in just in a little while. But by and large, Medi-Cal means free. There are no immigration restrictions for Medi-Cal. This is a huge change that has come in January 1st, 2024. We're very excited about this change because it means that Medi-Cal is being expanded to a larger population than it ever has, and we'll talk about that more later on. Medi-Cal calculates income differently for different kinds of households. We'll talk about that again later. Covered California, on the other hand, is for people with higher incomes than the 138% of the federal poverty level cutoff, and with no other form of insurance. While you could have Medi-Cal happily in the background of Medicare or even employer insurance, student insurance, other forms, COBRA, you can have Medi-Cal in the background there, and it will or will not help you out depending. You cannot have Covered California with tax subsidies and have other forms of minimum essential coverage in almost every case. So Covered California will only be affordable for you if it's your sole source of coverage. It has a sliding scale monthly premium, and we'll talk about how that's calculated in great detail later on, but that's the bottom line. And most covered California plans do come with deductibles, copays, coinsurance, but how much that is, again, will vary based on your income and what you choose. Covered California does have immigration restrictions. You must have a qualifying status and you must be able to pay taxes in the United States because you are required to have a social security number and or an individual taxpayer identification number. Income for Covered California is calculated in a very simple way. They use the Magi system. Again, we'll get more into that later. But the catchphrase you should think when you're thinking about Covered California is always taxable income. In the vast majority of cases, that's really all you need to know. So let's go deep. How do you qualify for Medi-Cal versus how do you qualify for Covered California? Medi-Cal in the past used to be a system that was available only to people who fell into certain categories. Medi-Cal for people with disabilities, Medi-Cal for children, Medi-Cal for seniors. Then came the Obamacare expansion, broadening Medi-Cal access to able-bodied adults across the spectrum for what we call expansion states, for states that chose to take that option. Medi-Cal was still limited in certain ways. If you were over the age of 65 or if you had a federal disability determination, you could only have a few $1,000s in the bank. Immigration, there were heavy immigration restrictions on access to Medi-Cal for certain ages. Over the course of the last 10 years, there have been a series of expansions broadening access bit by bit. And now we are at the point where if you are income and residence eligible for Medi-Cal, you are eligible for Medi-Cal, end of sentence. Unless you have committed fraud in the past, which is very rarely the cause of a disqualification. You are eligible for Medi-Cal, period, if you are income eligible for Medi-Cal and if you live in California. Obviously, that's wonderful news. It's also a huge change and a very surprising change to a number of Californians and an exciting one. And we definitely want to make sure that people get the word out about this. So income for Medi-Cal, I've mentioned that the income limit for most adults is 138% of the federal poverty level. What does that look like? 138%, oh, I'm so sorry, 138% of the federal poverty level for an adult is very little money. We have some income limits here that are for one person. I love it if you take a look at this and think about this. So for one person, we're looking at $1,732 a month in gross income. That's obviously very low. That's 21,000 more or less per year. This number increases with the number of people in your household, but it's still a fairly low cutoff. For children, the cutoff is higher. We're looking at 266% of the federal poverty level, which you can see is 3,339 for one person or 40,000 for over the course of the year. Obviously, there are very few children who have their own Medi-Cal household. Very few does not mean zero. There absolutely are children who are in a household of one who have Medi-Cal on their own, emancipated children, foster children living independently. It's absolutely not unheard of, but most people, most children will be part of their parents' household, and so their parents' income will be counted towards their Medi-Cal. You can also get a higher level of, you can have a higher level of income and still get Medi-Cal if you are pregnant. There's a free pregnancy-related Medi-Cal up to $26.74 a month for a single person, or $54.87 through the Medi-Cal Access Program. These are not actually usually calculated as per one person. When you're looking at pregnancy-related Medi-Cal, you're almost always a household of two because you count the forthcoming child as part of the household size. These income limits change every year. They change on January 1st for people within what we call the expansion group. That's people up to the age of 64 without a federal disability determination. And then for everybody else, for people with federal disabilities, SSI, SSDI, federal disability-based income, or for people who are over the age of 65, the income limits roll over on April 1st. It's a finicky difference, but it is something to keep in mind. I've said that the majority of people will receive free Medi-Cal. Their Medi-Cal will be free. There is an exception for people who are in those special categories, people who have what's called age blind and disabled Medi-Cal or another non-MAGI Medi-Cal. When I say MAGI Medi-Cal, I'm talking about modified adjusted gross income, which is the method of calculation of income that is used for both Covered California and for most working age adults and children who apply for Medi-Cal, which is the taxable income test that I referred to earlier. However, some people have non-MAGI Medi-Cal. They have Medi-Cal as somebody over the age of 65 or because they have a disability or because they are blind. Those people are may still be entitled to Medi-Cal even if their income is above the cutoff. However, they will have what's called a share of cost for Medi-Cal. A share of cost is a monthly deductible, and this is a very large number. You take your gross income, you reduce it in certain ways, and then you subtract out what's called the maintenance needs level, which was set decades ago and is not enough money to live on. It's only a few $100s, so most people end up spending most in share of cost Medi-Cal. The deductibles in question are very high. It's usually most of your monthly income. It can be all of your monthly income after rent or even before rent. So share of cost Medi-Cal is a program to be avoided unless you have very special circumstances, such as if you only need it as an emergency backstop, but you've got Medicare already, or if you are in a nursing home. So it's just something to keep in mind. So Covered California's income limits are much higher. And indeed, actually, theoretically, there are no income limits to Covered California. What there are income limits to are the subsidies that come with Covered California. Like I said, Covered California reduces the cost of your premiums in various ways. And I'll do a slightly deeper dive onto that in just a moment. But there are two major ways that they reduce your costs. There are protections called cost sharing reductions that reduce your actual copay, deductible, coinsurance, all of that. And then there's the tax credits, which reduce the cost of your premium. If you are shopping in Covered California and you need help reducing the cost of your premium, you must have income below a certain cutoff normally. However, right now, federal law actually limits premium costs to 8.5% of somebody's income, and so most people receive a premium tax credit shopping on the Covered California marketplace. There's only a limited amount of exceptions there. The federal cutoff for tax credits is 400%. California actually provides additional tax credits up to 600% of the federal poverty level, and that'll become more relevant if the protections that are currently in place sunset as is currently planned at the end of the year. So let's dig in on Covered California. Like I said, the cost of premiums on a Covered California plan vary widely by your income because there's assistance provided through the state to help pay your premium costs. And these are called advanced premium tax credits, and they are handled as a tax benefit. They are a tax credit, as the name implies. So the plan that you buy itself, let's say you're on the Covered California marketplace and you're shopping for a plan, and you say that you'd like to enroll in a plan with a very high level of protection. You'd like to have no deductible or a minimal deductible, and you know that you want to make sure that everything will be covered at a very high level, low co-insurance, low copay. You might choose to request a platinum plan. That's the highest tier of plan. Those plans cover about 90% of costs through what you pay through the premium. On the other hand, you might choose to, you might say, well, look, I can't afford a high premium. I'd like and I'm very healthy. I'm going to shop for a plan that costs me less upfront in my monthly payment. but that will have a higher deductible and will have a higher limit on out-of-pocket costs. That would be the bronze plan. And there are options in between: bronze, silver, gold, platinum. Those are the tiers of plans available on the marketplace. Um, these are these will control how much the plan itself costs, and the plan will say, okay, well, we are going to charge $1,000 for our month for our silver plan or what have you, and then Covered California will help you out with that with an advance premium tax credit. These tax credits are paid directly to the health plan. And so most people who have advanced premium tax credits may not really think of it that way. This is not, usually I find that most people who have Covered California plans think, okay, my premium is $200. My premium is $300. They're not thinking my premium is $200 and Covered California is paying $800 to the health plan. But that is in fact what's happening. In the background, you are paying a certain amount and Covered California is paying the rest as a tax credit on your behalf straight to Kaiser or Anthem or Aetna or whoever it might be. You must do your taxes if you are on Covered California. It is a requirement. And the reason it is a requirement, even if you otherwise need not do so, is that that is Covered California's chance to check that what you reported in your income at the beginning of the year, which gave this estimation for how much your premium would cost, matches up with how much they actually paid out on your behalf. So maybe you report your income at the end of the year and it comes in higher than you had expected. In that case, Covered California will ask for some of its money back. They'll say, okay, well, we paid out $800 a month on your behalf in tax credits. We actually should only have paid $700 a month in tax credits. We'd like $100 a month back, please. Conversely, very often it goes the other way. Covered California, you reported a certain amount and Covered California said, oh, I'm sorry, we only paid out $200 a month in our tax credits. We actually should have been paying you $500 a month in tax credits. Here is a tax credit back to you. Your taxes will be reduced by that amount, or it's a refundable credit, so you may get a check back in the mail. These amounts are, like I said, based on your adjusted gross income. It's perfectly fine for you to try to update that throughout the year so that you're dealing with less finicky taxes at the end of it. You should do that on the Covered California site. But annual income is what matters for this. There are repayment limits for how much Covered California can ask you to pay back if a mistake is made. So what we have seen for the last couple of years is a number of people who accidentally ended up on both Medi-Cal and Covered California. And as I mentioned, you're not eligible for these subsidies if you're on two plans at once. So if you were eligible for Medi-Cal and you had a Medi-Cal plan silently in the background, and you find that out and have this massive tax bill from Covered California for that reason, Covered California, your taxes should, when you are doing your taxes, the amount that you are required to pay back is limited by your income. So you might only be asked to pay back, $400 of that amount or $800 of that amount, rather than $15,000 of that amount, depending on how much money you report on your taxes. If you do run into this issue, please give us a call or another, or a tax attorney or another agency. It's a good idea to address it quickly because you have the right to correct erroneous Covered California coverage, but only if you act fairly quickly. So that's as to the premiums, but there's actually more protections available under Covered California than even that. If your income is lower, if it's less than 250% of the federal poverty level and you pick what's called an enhanced silver plan, the actual cost of care is going to be more affordable. It will reduce your coinsurance, your copays, and your deductibles. Again, these are paid directly to the health plan. There is no reconciliation for CSRs, so it just sort of happens automatically. Please do update your income if your income goes above 250%. Make sure that Covered California knows that that has happened, and you'll be asked to switch to a different plan. Immigration eligibility is very different as of this year between Medi-Cal and Covered California. Your immigration eligibility is not relevant for Medi-Cal at all. They may still be required to ask you about it, and they do have a federal requirement to ask you for your social security number if you have one. This is not to find out whether or not you are a citizen. This is to make sure that nobody else is claiming you on their Medi-Cal household. I wish I could say that that doesn't happen, but it absolutely does. People do find that they're fairly often it's children finding out that their parents have been listing them as a household member, although they've been estranged, or vice versa. This is why Medi-Cal asks for that information, generally speaking. However, if you find that when you're applying for Medi-Cal, the county is discriminating against you based on your status, is saying, "I'm sorry, you don't qualify. You aren't legally present," or far worse, or threatens to report you in any way, that is entirely contrary to California law. This information cannot be used to deny you Medi-Cal. And if you choose that you don't want to apply for Medi-Cal, but somebody else in your household is applying, so let's say you and your wife both want to apply for Medi-Cal, you need not provide your immigration information as long as you clarify that you yourself are not applying. The same goes for Covered California. Covered California does care what your immigration status is. Those restrictions have not been lifted. However, you need not be a citizen or a resident. There are a number of other qualifying statuses, and those are listed on the Covered California site. The bottom line is that you must be lawfully present. The federal government must know that you're here. You must be a qualified immigrant, and you must be able to pay taxes. Because if you can't pay taxes, you cannot you can't reconcile, and you'll be in violation of Covered California's rules. So you must, for that reason, have either a social security number or an ITIN. You'll note that there are a couple of non-immigrant based statuses listed here. You can have a refugee, you can have a work visa and get Covered California. You can have a student visa and get Covered California. You don't need to be in what's called an immigrant-based status group to get Covered California. It doesn't work like SSI in that way. It's okay to only be here for a few years as long as you have a lawful and qualifying status. Your assets or resources were never considered for Covered California, and they are no longer considered for Medi-Cal. This is the shortest slide I have. Only money coming in is considered. Income, not assets. If you do have an asset that gives you income, if you have a bank account that's paying you interest, that might be income. But if you don't, then we don't care how much money you have in the bank. You must live with the intent to reside in California. That means that you either have moved to California or you're not sure when you're leaving California. You're a college student, you've come out here, you're not sure if you're moving back home to Iowa at the end of the semester or if you're planning to stick around. That's fine. That's an indefinite stay. That's intent to reside. Your Medi-Cal plan is tied to what county you live in. Your Covered California plan is tied to your zip code. Different plans are offered in different counties or different areas. Please make sure that you report your residence accurately, that it does matter a lot. Report your changes timely if you move from county to county. So when you move permanently from Alameda to San Diego, please do let the county know ASAP to trigger what's called an inter-county transfer so you can start getting your benefits in the right county. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A. I'm going to take a look at the chat. Looks like people are just introducing themselves. So I'm going to move on to enrollment. And please feel free to put questions in the chat as we go along. Before I dig in on this, I do want to add, if you're feeling overwhelmed or like this is a complicated system, I'm afraid that's the correct emotion. It is a complicated system. It is overwhelming. The good news is, although the rules about when and how you qualify and what is income and what, how you get into what are very complicated, the rules for how to access these plans are a little simpler, and we're going to get in on that now. So you can enroll in Medi-Cal in a number of different ways. One way is by going to Covered California, coveredca.com and filing a Covered California application. If you don't qualify for Covered California, you will automatically be shunted to the county. So that's what makes it part of this great coverage continuum, right? There's, if you are on Covered California and you tell them, hey, I lost my job and I'm not on unemployment, they'll automatically refer your information to the county anyway. These programs are connected. The reverse is also true, although you may need to actively apply. Um, you're you can also go down to an individual county social services office. Now, I've mentioned counties several times. I've mentioned that your Medi-Cal plan is tied to your county. I've mentioned your county decision maker. Medi-Cal is operated by county agencies called social services offices, which operate Medi-Cal, usually operate Medi-Cal, CalWORKS, CalFresh, and other public benefits programs altogether. The Medi-Cal office may be broken out or it may not be. And the county agencies are the ones that administer and accept applications for Medi-Cal. So you can file an application directly with the county in person, by mail, usually by fax. You can go to benefitscal.com. This is a new site. It's been having some technical difficulties, but it should be up and running soon, and you should be able to file an application there. You can also get Medi-Cal as a link with another benefit. So if you are eligible for and enrolled in CalWORKS, which is state welfare cash assistance to parents, or if you are eligible for and enrolled in SSI, you will get Medi-Cal automatically as a part of that. And it will continue as long as you have that benefit. And if you ever get off it, it'll continue for a little period after that, unless there's some dramatic reason. Otherwise, while the county reassesses and makes sure that you're not still eligible in some other way. You can enroll into Medi-Cal at any time if you qualify. So it's mid-March. Well, it's coming up on the end of March. I can walk into my Medi-Cal office today and say, hi, I need Medi-Cal. And if I am approved for Medi-Cal, my coverage will take effect in March. It will take a while to process, but retroactively, I will have been covered for the month of March. You can actually have up to 90 days of prior retroactive coverage as well. Let's say that I walk into the Medi-Cal office today and I say, hey, I need to apply for Medi-Cal. I lost my job January 1st. I could ask for retroactive coverage to cover any bills in January and February, but not for December because I wasn't eligible for Medi-Cal in December. Medi-Cal and Covered California both have a deadline for how long they can take to process your application. It's 45 days. They can ask you for more information if you haven't given them the needed verifications. If that's the case, please do follow up with them because that's a common way that people time out of their applications is they don't realize the county's asking them for verifications. But another common way that people time out of their applications is just the county's moving slow or is overwhelmed. And I'm afraid that the counties don't have that flexibility. They must process the application within 45 days. Sort of end of sentence. In the meantime, you might need care. If you apply in any of these ways and you are eligible for Magi Medi-Cal, right? You're an expansion age adult under the age of 64 and you don't have a federal disability determination, or you are a child under the age of 19. You can get Medi-Cal while your application is being processed as long as it looks like on the surface of it that you are Medi-Cal eligible. The county should give you a temporary card to access those benefits. Sometimes it's hard to get that. You can also get what's called hospital presumptive eligibility. Let's say that you have a genuine emergency, you end up in the ER, you haven't applied for Medi-Cal yet, or your application is still pending. The hospital can submit a new Medi-Cal application for you. They're in the hospital to cover your stay, and then you just go down to the county and finish it out once you're on your feet. And then finally, if you talk to the county, you should be able to get temporary coverage if you are pregnant or if you are under the age of 19. Covered California has slightly more finicky application rules. It is not retroactive, except for under certain circumstances we'll talk about in a moment, but certainly not retroactive in the expansive way that Medi-Cal can be. And you can only enroll into Covered California during open enrollment, which is an annual period that starts in the winter at the end of a year, usually in October or November, and ends in usually January or February in the next year for coverage for the forthcoming calendar year. If you miss open enrollment, you might have a special enrollment period if something happens, and we'll go over that list of events in just a moment, but that's called a qualifying life event. Your coverage takes effect the first day of the month after you pick a plan. So let's say that you enroll, Covered California takes 45 days to process your application. So I enroll now, Covered California finishes processing my application towards the end of April. I select a plan, my coverage starts May 1st. Both Medi-Cal and Covered California have that same 45-day processing timeline, just something to keep in mind. So what's a qualifying life event? Well, as you can see, it can be a lot of things. I would really recommend that you take a look at coveredca.com if you think you may have had a change in your life that affects your ability to receive health insurance. That's sort of the bottom line. Marriage, having a child, adopting a child, beginning to foster a child, moving such that you have access to a different pool of plans, losing your health insurance through no fault of your own, losing Medi-Cal. There's a lot of different options here. You may have a special enrollment period if there is a public health emergency declared in your county. So if there are wildfires or floods, you'll have an enrollment period subsequent to that. This year, there was a bug in the Covered California enrollment system. So if for whatever reason you couldn't apply through the end of normal open enrollment, there's an extension until March 26th. So get in there now if that happens to be you. And then finally, if you're very low income, if you're under 150% of the federal poverty level, you can apply every month, as well as if you are a federally recognized American Indian or Alaskan Native. And you can also enroll through an insurance broker. We have a number of enrollment partners we refer people to. I'm sure all of the agencies here today also do, or are enrollment assisters themselves. It's just really important to make sure that you understand what your broker has signed you up into, that you know, for example, that it is a Covered California plan, so that if you have Medi-Cal, you know to cancel your Medi-Cal, or if you have employment insurance, you know to tell them that. Your Medi-Cal and your Covered California for your Covered California certainly, and your Medi-Cal probably will be provided through a company such as Alameda Alliance, Kaiser Permanente, HealthNet, Blue Shield. This is called a managed care plan. These come in two varieties, HMOs and PPOs. There are a few other specialty exceptions, but they're very rare. HMOs allow access to in-network doctors and block access to out-of-network doctors. And we'll do a very deep dive on HMO plans and how they operate next week. So please come back and join me if you have questions about that. PPOs work in a slightly different way. I believe Blue Shield is certainly the major PPO player on Covered California. They may be the only one, but I could be wrong about that. They allow access to a greater variety of doctors. You can go to, there isn't a strict out-of-network division, but the plan will not pay the full cost, usually of any of these providers, certainly of non-preferred providers. They'll pay some amount. You must select a plan available in your area. Like I said, Medi-Cal plans are tied to your county. Covered California plans are tied to your zip code. Can also be tied to your county. So if you need providers in a certain area, you need to make sure that you are in that area. If there are special exceptions, talk to us. There may be options. So you're enrolling in coverage, and you need to make sure that the plan has the services you need. You are taking a particular medication, and you want to make sure that it's a covered medication. You have a therapist that you've been seeing for years. You want to make sure that you stay in network with that therapist, right? You're midstream on receiving gender-affirming care, and you don't want to have to switch to a whole new team of providers. The best way to make sure that your plan covers the services that you need. Each plan will, for prescription drugs, it's fairly simple. Plans are required to post their formulary. That's the list of drugs they cover, usually including brand names. However, although there are legal requirements that plans provide a directory of the doctors that they accept, and Covered California has a doctor lookup on their site, and all of these things are true, in the real world, plans are not always very consistent about updating those directories. It's an ongoing issue, and the really the only way to be sure that somebody is in network for your plan is to talk to that provider. You call the doctor's office, you say, this is I want to sign up for the Anthem 73 Silver plan, or what have you, and they'll say, yes, we are in network for Anthem 73 Silver, or no, we are not. It is important to check that information directly with the provider. I wish that I had a better workaround for you. Like I said, plans are legally required to maintain updated and adequate directories, but the number of times we've received complaints on this topic, it is unfortunately it's just very high, and there's just no it's not a good way to select your plan. If you have a provider that you have been seeing and you want to keep that provider, or if you've been on a medication that you need and you see that the plan doesn't cover that provider, doesn't cover that medication, you may have the right to something called continuity of care, but it really depends, and it wouldn't be something to rely on unless you had no other choice. So, it's something to keep in mind. So this presentation is obviously in English, but English is in no way the only language in which you can receive these services or access your care. California has very robust language access laws, and you have rights to receive care and to receive equal treatment based on what language you speak. These obligations apply to your Medi-Cal County, they apply to the Department of Healthcare Services, they apply to Covered California, and they apply to all California regulated plans. They must provide you service in your language. Providers have a slightly different set of rules, but all of these agencies that administer your care do have these requirements. Excuse me. You have the right to most notices and informational materials in threshold languages. These are the most common languages spoken in your area. So in some county, I think every county in California, that will include Spanish. In some, it'll include Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean. It's usually, this differs best based on whether we're talking about Medi-Cal or Covered California, but usually it's the top 15 languages. This is written material, right? You have the right to oral interpretation in any language, and that interpretation must be provided for free. I want to say this again. You have the right to oral interpretation in any language, and that service must be provided for free. The reason I am underlining this is that this is a very commonly violated right. We absolutely get people who say, I cannot reach my plan because they said they didn't have anyone to speak to me in Spanish. I can't reach my county because they said they just kept kicking me to English speakers and they wouldn't call an interpreter, even though I only speak Arabic. This is very common. I wish it was less common, but it is unlawful, and you can stand on your rights there, and insist on receiving interpretation services. You don't need to have your child or your family member interpret for you. So what happens if someone gets it wrong? If you're denied Medi-Cal, if you're denied Medi-Cal in your language, if you're denied if the premiums are set wrong, if you can't use the site correctly, you can file an appeal with the California Department of Social Services within 90 days of receiving notice of the error. That's the written notice that gets mailed out to you. There are exceptions, extensions for a good cause, but it's 90 days is a fairly hard limit, and it's good to get within it if you can. You can do that by phone. You can do it online at acms.dss.ca.gov. You can do it by mail or fax. And I just want to stress that if Medi-Cal or Covered California takes longer than 45 days to process your claim, that is still that acts as something that you can challenge. They are required to process your claim within a certain amount of time. If your health plan gets it wrong, so not the county or Covered California, but the plan, you can file an appeal in this way if you have a Medi-Cal plan, or you can file an appeal with the Department of Managed Healthcare. We'll get into lots of details about all of this next week. I have about 5 minutes left, and so I'm going to do a quick overview of some other health programs, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about public charge, and then I'll take questions. So these are just some top level, very common programs. Like I said, I'm not discussing the most common form of insurance, which is employer insurance, but I did want to hit sort of a list of a big three, as it were, of other forms of insurance that people might have in California. One is Medicare. Medicare and Medi-Cal are different programs. If there's one takeaway that you have about Medicare that really genuinely is it, you wouldn't you possibly wouldn't be surprised given how similar the names are phonetically and visually, and also just based on how confusing this all is, that there is a lot of confusion out there about whether or not somebody has Medicare or Medi-Cal or both. It's very common to have both. It's perfectly lawful to have both, and in fact, it's wonderful to have both. Being a dual eligible, meaning being eligible for both Medicare and Medi-Cal, means that your Medicare is at a minimum low cost, usually free, with the exception of certain prescription medications. So what is Medicare? It's federal insurance. There's no state component. It's associated with either retirement benefits or disability cash benefits. So we're looking for Social Security or SSDI, not SSI. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. It's something that Social Security determines based on whether or not you have a work history or a family member with a work history. You do need a work history to qualify for these benefits, and thus for Medicare in the majority of instances, except for the hospital benefit of Part A. There are exceptions to this if you are also Medi-Cal eligible and in certain circumstances. But for people with disabilities, the work history requirement is pretty firm. You do need a qualifying status, and that is more restrictive still than Covered California. So Medicare is generally only for people who are permanent immigrants of some kind of durable kind to the United States, citizens, residents, people with refugee status or asylum status, things of that nature. There are some specialty exceptions as well. Medicare covers a great deal, but not quite everything. It covers inpatient, outpatient, routine care, prescription drugs. You can also enroll in what's called a Part C plan. A Part C plan is a managed care plan for Medicare, and it may cover more than the baseline original Medicare, but it works like other managed care plans. You have a contract that has a contract with various different providers, and you have to see those providers. So there's pros and cons. COBRA is another very common way to receive health insurance in California. COBRA is continuation coverage. If you were on employer insurance and now you're not, your employment ends, or you were married to somebody who had employment and they had a qualifying there was some kind of qualifying life event that led them to lose coverage, you might have the right to continue to have it. What I really want to stress here is that you can have COBRA if you quit. This is a common misconception. COBRA is not about is not just about being let go. It is full cost, and it is usually quite expensive, meaning if your employer was paying $1,000 to Anthem each month for you to have medical care and you were only paying 100 of it, you're going to be paying 1,000. You're paying the full cost of the care. So it's usually more advantageous to enroll in Covered California, but it may not be. Make sure that you act fast, though, because you are going to have a qualifying life event to enroll in Covered California when you are let go and when your COBRA coverage expires, but not in the middle. You can receive COBRA on exactly the same terms as what the company is paying is providing for their current employees. What that means is that if you move away from, so let's say that the company has a contract with an insurer who only operates in California, and you move to Texas, you may not be able to receive COBRA because the plan doesn't operate in your state. That is lawful. Other than that, it's usually pretty one-to-one. And it continues for up to 18 months after termination, and an additional 18 months after that if there are certain federal protections that kick in, or under California law if your company's headquartered in California and sufficiently of large size. Violations of COBRA are generally handled by employment or labor law. So please feel free to call a health insurance attorney like at the HCA, but you may also want to talk to an employment attorney because fairly often the people at fault are your employers. And then finally, I just want to talk about what's called the county health plans. Sometimes they're called county indigent health plans. These are for people who don't qualify for Medi-Cal. There's a requirement under California law that each county operate a plan for people who are not Medi-Cal qualified. This requirement, I believe it predates the ACA. I could be wrong about that, but it's certainly not designed with reference to the ACA very clearly. And it basically is meant to provide sort of expansion coverage for people who are not Medi-Cal eligible, usually by immigration status, so that's no longer relevant. But now county health plans sort of are for folks who are a little too high income for Medi-Cal, and may not be able to enroll in Covered California for immigration reasons. But each county has a lot of flexibility in how they design their plans and may have very firm restrictions on who they accept. Please look into your county's rules. It will vary very widely. If you're in San Francisco, it'll operate basically as an extension of Medi-Cal with I believe a low premium, and it is an ordinary health plan. If you are in Fresno, I believe they have just sort of a repayment coverage for medical debts. They can be very different. Finally, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about public charge. So we get a lot of questions from folks who are not citizens about the consequences of enrolling in these plans, and I do want to talk about this. There have been attempts to change this law under prior administrations, and the law might change in the future. Under the current law, however, the protections are very robust. Ordinary use of Medi-Cal does not incur any kind of risk to your immigration status, and the same goes for Covered California. The risks associated with using public benefits, which is what public charge is. It's a negative immigration determination based on the fact that you are using a public benefit and therefore are a charge on the public. First of all, they generally only apply to sponsor-based applicants for green card. So your parents are applying for you to become a resident, or you're applying for your parents to become a resident, and they are not yet a citizen, right? They're not even a resident yet. They are trying to become a resident. That is usually the point at which a public charge determination comes in. It can also come into effect if you have a green card and you're traveling outside the U.S. for more than 6 months and you're being readmitted, or you're being admitted on a non-immigrant basis. It doesn't apply to applications for citizenships at all, and it doesn't apply to refugees, asylees, U visa, or T visa holders. So if you have a status based on a credible fear, you are not subject to these tests. And again, it does, Medi-Cal under certain circumstances will have an effect, and that's if you are using it for long-term care, meaning a stay in a nursing home or a long-term stay in a psychiatric hospital. There are a lot of details here, and you can go to the website keepyourbenefits.org. I believe it's a product of the National Immigration Law Center. I would really recommend taking a look. It's got a calculator that can help you determine whether or not these considerations apply to you at all. All right, so that is my whirlwind overview of eligibility and enrollment in California's most common healthcare programs. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I do want to shout out Kit Bear's comment in the chat that provider directory inaccuracy is a big problem. I couldn't agree more. We at Legal Aid are not allowed to comment on legislative advocacy, and I won't do so here. But I just wanted to affirm that it's an issue that we see a lot of, and that can really be troubling to our clients. Thank you so much for hearing me. Any questions? Well, thank you all. I'm glad that this was really helpful. I'm available for follow-ups. Ariella can put you in touch with me. I see Roman asking, will the decks be sent out? I'm more than happy to share that.
Yeah, we will be sharing the recording of this. And thank you again, Emma, for all the information you shared and providing various resources. Sure, folks will definitely appreciate rewatching or sharing this with others. So, yeah, we'll definitely share it out at the end of this week. And then, just as a reminder, we are hosting the second part of this webinar series next Thursday. So, same place, same time, just next Thursday, where Emma will be joined with some other folks from the Department of Managed Healthcare and cover, things like access to healthcare once you're already enrolled in a managed health care plan, focusing on access to culturally competent mental health care, gender affirming care, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, please join us. If you did register for this webinar, you should already have access to join next week. But I'll just drop the registration link in the chat if folks wanted to share that with any friends, colleagues, or anyone else in your network. Um, and yeah, if folks didn't think of any questions, or if you think of something later, Emma, would you welcome sharing your email in the chat just so folks can reach out that
Absolutely.
way? Awesome.
Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. For any kind of follow-up questions from this panel, if you have referrals, if you want to reach out to me for specific legal advice for yourself, a friend or family member, or for a client, I'm going to go back to the start of the presentation because I would like those to be passed through the Health Consumer Alliance so that we can make sure that they get help directly because we can't advise without speaking to the affected party. So if you have a specific advice question, please call the HCA Consumer Hotline. The number is back on your screen, and we would love to make sure that we can help out. And if we can, we will.
Yes, thank you so much, Emma. Great. So yeah, I will end the recording there. Thanks all again for joining us. And yeah, I hope you'll have a good rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you all.